Hey, welcome into Strictly Speaking here on True Blue. I'm Bob Frantz. We've got a really important conversation to have today about October 7th, about the ongoing war in Gaza because of the war that was started way back on October 7th of 2023. As we get closer and closer to the 1 year anniversary of that horrendous day, we're talking with somebody who's very well versed in the situation. He has written a book. It's called October 7th, The War Against Hamas Through the Eyes of an Israeli Commando Officer. That commando officer is Captain Elkana or Kuno Cohen. He's a reserve commando officer in the IDF. It's the Israeli Defense Forces, for those who don't know. He was born in Jerusalem, raised in, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but he'll correct me, in Yeraham, is the eldest of 7 siblings. His dad is an educator. His mom leads the nursing department at Ben Gurion University. His military journey began in the Shaldag unit. And again, I'm going to work on these Hebrew pronunciations. I'm sure I'll mess them up, but he knows it's not on purpose. Before moving to the Duvdeven unit, completing his training there and continuing to officer school, he eventually became a team commander, both in his unit and at the officers training school. He is currently studying for a bachelor's degree in real estate and appraisals and serves as a commando officer in the reserves. During the Swords of Iron War, he was deployed with the 551st Brigade in northern Gaza. His story, the story of so many Israelis. October 7th is not just the story of one Israeli officer, but a narrative of an entire nation, a nation that stepped up without a moment's hesitation to face a literal existential challenge with a sense of purpose and mission. Today, we go deep inside October 7th, 2023, and where it goes from here with our guest, Elkana Kuno Cohen, right here on Strictly Speaking. Kuno, thank you so much for joining us here in Cleveland, Ohio. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me. It's a great privilege to be here.
It is a privilege and a pleasure to have you. I've talked to a lot of people about October 7th since this all went down on this program. Many of them politicians or pundits, sometimes rabbis, sometimes attorneys. I have not talked to somebody actually as a part of the IDF military in any way, so it's a real treat to be able to have you here. I wish we weren't talking. Don't take this the wrong way, but I wish we never met, because if this terrible thing wasn't happening, we would not have occasion to talk about this. But as it happens, this is where we are. Does it feel like a year? I mean, we are less than obviously less than a month away from when this whole thing started. Does it seem like a year has gone by for you?
Not, but when I'm thinking about the hostages that right now hold in captivity for 11 months by the hand of those terrorists in their dungeons, just heartbreaking. And maybe for us, it's passed quickly, but for them, unbelievable.
That's a great point. It's a matter of perspective. I cannot believe we're coming up on 1 year. I have been talking about this in some depth. We have a very strong Jewish community in the city in Northeast Ohio, where we are right now. And so I've had a lot of occasions to talk to a lot of people with ties to Israel, family in Israel, business interests in Israel, whatever the case might be. And for me, it has just gone like very, very quickly. But you're right. For those people being, and I don't know, Kuno, if I want to even imagine what they're going through. It's not just the passage of the time, 11 long months plus that they have been there, but what are they enduring? Do we have any idea of what savage terrorists are doing to these people?
Unfortunately, a few days ago, a week ago, we got a reminder
Yeah.
of what those savages doing to those hostages when 6 of them got executed by Hamas. And one of them, I want to say their names was Ori Danino, Carmel Gat, Hersh Goldberg Polin, Alexander Levanov, Almog Sarusti, and Eden Yerushalmi. And you ask me what are they experienced through this time in captivity. So I just want to tell you that Eden, when her body found, it was 36 kilos. I don't know how much it's in terms of pounds or your how do you call it, but 36, it's less than a 50-year-old weight. It's
So
unbelievable, and it's just hard to think about what they're going through right now.
Yeah, it's what's really difficult is when I think about the condition of Gazan civilians, because Hamas, what they have done throughout not just this period, but long before this, they have been starving their own people. When humanitarian aid has been brought to Gaza, anything that is intended for the civilians there, Hamas takes and uses and confiscates for themselves and for their families, further depriving their own citizens and civilians of whatever their needs are. For example, when pipes were provided to provide plumbing for many of the regions there in Gaza, they were taken and repurposed to launch rockets from, and things of that nature. So when food and things are available and Hamas won't even give it to their own people, I can only imagine how much they're depriving of these hostages that they see as less than human.
Yeah, unfortunately, our hostage is suffering in every second while we're talking. And while we're talking, there are still 101 hostages in the captivity by the hand of Hamas. It's enormous number. I want also your audience, your viewers, to understand what it is for us. So on October 7, 253 people were kidnapped and 1,200 people were slaughtered, which in terms of the US, it means that 7,500 people were being kidnapped and 36,000 people were being slaughtered and executed by the end of Hamas. It's numbers that we can understand.
No, because we're coming up on, and by the time this actually is aired, we will have passed the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. So the September 11th terrorist attacks here in our country, and we lost 3,000 Americans that day. But when you put it in the context you just did, 36,000 would be comparative to the population. That's what we would be marking here. So I cannot imagine what that's like for Israelis. Um, we'll talk more about the hostages and the conditions and the current state of negotiations, the war effort, and so on in a moment. But let's go back because your book does. Let's go back and talk about October 7th. Tell me what happened to you that day. Tell me where you were, what you learned, how you processed it as it happened.
Yeah, so on October, before that, I'm going to talk about October 7. I want people to understand. You just mentioned that I'm a student. I'm 27 years old, but I'm also a newlywed, an expecting father, a business owner. The last thing that all my friends would like to do is to participate in war. That day, we were forced to fight for our people. And we realized that on October 7, when we lost a lot of friends. I can tell you during that fight, I lost 26 friends. It's enormous number. I don't think that right now I'm processing that number because every time when I'm trying to think about my friends, it's just heartbreaking. All of them was good people that some of them their only problem was that they went on a festival music to dance and celebrate life during a holiday. So yeah, this is for me. I'm just sharing because I want people to realize that. But on October 7, I slept in my in-laws. It was a holiday, and 5:30 in the morning, my wife woke me up. She was terrified. It was hour before everything actually started, and she told me that she had a nightmare. In her nightmare, hundreds of terrorists were chasing us, and I couldn't use my gun in order to defend ourselves. I hugged her back and I told her, Shiran, don't worry. Everything will be fine. I even smiled a little bit and we went back to sleep. An hour later, I was awakened by the Iron Dome system that was activated by the missile we're shedding from Gaza towards Israel. That time, I realized that something serious is going on. I ran into my house. I called my commander, which is an observed Jew. I usually don't use my phone over holidays, but I opened my phone, called my commander, and I tried to realize what's going on. He told me, Elkana, something serious going on. Prepare every equipment that you have. And while me hanging up the phone call, I got another phone call of my friends from my unit who told me that my wife got called up as well. Me and my wife both served in Duvdevan. This is where I met her. And I realized that me and my wife getting called up on the same time on a holiday, and I realized that we're going through something serious. But I can tell you that no question, no hesitation. I realized that we're going through a difficult time, and we have to go stop everything and fight for our country.
You know, we should probably talk about October 6th and October 5th and October 4th and every day before October 7th, too. Because when I talk to people with experience in Israel, people who have lived in Israel, people who have visited Israel, or again, people who have family there, and I guess just also from watching the news, describe for us what the way of life is in a country that is constantly in jeopardy of some kind, whether it be rockets from Hezbollah to the north or attacks from Hamas, from Gaza, or wherever the attacks might. I mean, I cannot imagine what it's like to live in a community where you know what the siren means. Here we might have a siren sound if there's going to be a tornado, rare as that is. And it kind of, okay, it's time to alert. But in an everyday lifestyle that you guys have, somebody's trying to kill you. Somebody's trying to destroy your communities and wipe you literally, as they say, from the river to the sea. Can you describe what life is like on a daily, even before October 7th?
It's good that you mentioned that because people sometimes don't understand what does that mean to live in Israel. During Independence Day, there is the how it's called, the fire when they shooting the, I forgot how to say it, like the fire on the sky for the Independence Day
Oh, fireworks.
fireworks.
Yes.
Yeah. So I went to Disney with my wife a couple of years before, and I saw everyone smiling during the fireworks. And for us, the first uh, thing that popped into my mind it was, oh my god, it's the same sound of a rocket being exploded.
Wow.
So when you talk to a 2 years old kid in Israel and he's hearing any siren, the first thing that he will do is to go and search the closest bomb shelter, because this is what he used to. This is what's going on here. But beside that, we also have community. Sometimes we are divided because it's like everywhere, but we have great people here in Israel, and I think you can see that by the amount of high-tech company that developed here in Israel, the amazing resorts. So it's lovely place, but side next to that, like side by side, it is also a very uh, dangerous place once in a while when our enemies try to attack us.
So the first of all, the fact that you saw fireworks and instantly thought it was a rocket attack, because that's what you're trained to do, is just a terrifying fact and a reality that I cannot imagine. I feel badly for you and everybody who has to go through that. But secondly, when you talk about living like that, as soon as you hear the siren, go seek your bomb shelter. Your children are raised that way, raised to immediately seek shelter whenever you hear the sounds, and the Iron Dome is activated, and so on and so forth. Um, is that why you have compulsory service? You mentioned you met your wife in the service, right? So you were both in service. Is everyone in Israel, when you are required to serve a certain period of, is it 2 years in the IDF or whatever it might be, is everyone dragged there kicking and screaming via, like, by way of draft, and I have to do this? Or people like you seem like, I am always ready to fight for my country and for my people. So tell me about what the military service component is in Israel.
Yeah, so in Israel, everyone have to draft into the IDF. I
Men
think
and
the
women.
men and women, the majority are take part of that and support that. And for us, it's a mission to protect our country. And the majority of the people here in Israel see it that way. Some of the people see it differently, but this is not the majority. The majority here, we're a patriot nation, and we're looking to defend our country because we understand if it's not for us, the state of Israel would not be existing here. So yeah, it's everyone here, and it's after you finish your high school when you're 18. It's it's you basically drafted into the idea. Some of the people doing a gap year in between, but they're going later on to the idea.
And a minimum of 2 years, is that the rule?
The minimum for women it's 2 years. The minimum for boys it's 2 years and 8 months. Used to be 3 years, and now they brought it back to 3 years because the crazy situation that we live in. We understand that we need any source of soldiers here to defend our country.
Now you said you're 27 years old, right?
Yeah.
And you're a captain of a commando unit in the reserves. So you stayed in. Tell me about that. Tell me why you didn't do your 3 years and out and start your family and everything else. You said you. And by the way, congratulations on your upcoming child. I hope you and your family are safe. Tell me about why you're still in.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm on reserve duty. I'm not an active duty. Uh, but the reason why I'm here, I think it's obvious. Our country uh, being in threat for the basically since we were established, and everyone here understand that, and most of the people here in Israel understand that, and they keep doing reserve duty because we are obligated to our country and to make sure that my wife and my future baby will be able to live here peacefully.
So let's talk about the propaganda war before we start talking more about the hostages. And you mentioned there's a different belief or different feeling amongst people in Israel, which you're right, you're going to get anywhere. Every people are going to have different opinions about the way things should. Some people like the current government, some people don't like the current government. We'll get into all of that, but I want to talk about the propaganda war here in the States. And I think probably all over the world, we continue to hear from the Gaza Health Ministry or the Hamas Health Ministry about the number of civilians, women and children in particular, who are dying at the hands of the bloodthirsty, savage IDF. That you and your, colleagues there in the Israeli military are just laying waste to civilian outpost after civilian outpost, villages and schools and hospitals, tens of thousands, so much so that our students here in the United States are protesting on college campuses against genocide that they say you and the IDF are committing. Tell me how you guys receive that in Israel.
You know why I smile through the time that you were talking? Because two things. First of all, I know what I did in order to avoid any casualties through this war. But less than that, all the people who trust the number of Hamas, are you trust the numbers of organization that did a genocide himself? There was bragging about that. There was proud about that. Some of the people there called their families proudly and said, "Hey, mom, I just murdered 10 Israelis." And while his mom says, "Oh my God, I'm sorry that I couldn't be there with you and slaughter Israelis side by side with you." So how people can trust those people and trust their numbers? Of course, this is what they're trying to do. But let me share one story that demonstrate better than anything, because I know what I did there. One of the time, we got an intelligence of a school that was full with infrastructure used for terror. But we also knew that that school was full with civilians. So as we always do, we start calling them all out, and no one left the school. So we used a drone in order to scan the area from above, and we saw that there is Hamas guard inside that school that didn't let those civilians to leave the area. And one of the kids there, 5 years old, tried to run away, and the Hamas guard shot him in his head and killed him in front of his mom. Hamas killed his own people because he understands that if he will be able to keep his civilians inside the school, we won't conquer that school zone they use for terror base. So we understood that time that we have to kill those guards in order to let those civilians leave the area. And one of the Hamas guards went on the rooftop, and he was holding a baby just in front of us, a Palestinian baby, because he knew that will be the perfect shield for him, a perfect human shield, because he using our morality against us, because he know exactly that we won't shoot him and we won't do anything like that. And behind them was a guy that was holding a camera that was he was waiting for us to take that shot. But we didn't took the shot, not because we were afraid from that camera guy, but we have different values. And unlike those savages that were brutally murdered babies and kidnapped people from their villages and their kibbutzim, or kidnap people from a music festival, we don't shooting and we're not killing or executing any civilians or babies. And I can tell you that we're doing as much as we can in order to avoid that. So we didn't took that shot, even though he knew exactly where we were. And for me, it's mean that I'm put my life on the line and my friend's life on the line because he couldn't aim any RPGs, rifles, and everything that he had in order to kill us while we didn't took that shot because he was holding a baby. So we waited with that shot, and later on he went on the rooftop again. He was surrounded by a group of women. One of them banned a little bit. It was enough for a sniper to take the shot and to eliminate the threat. And afterwards, we were able to let those civilians leave the school. I'm sharing that knowledge on this experience. This is not some story that I heard. This is my story. So every time when I hear those people protest against us, it is just a lie. Or they hate us, or they just don't understand what's going on. Because we put our life on the line several times during my time. And just outrageous when people protest against us, when people spread lies, because we did what we have to do. And still, in order to everyone needs to remember that we're not fighting because we want to fight. I rather have a boring life with my wife and with my future baby. But right now I'm fighting for the sake of my brother and sister that's still holding in captivity while we're talking, and for the sake of those Palestinians, the Hamas using them as human shields.
Kuno, the international community doesn't believe you. I don't know why. The United Nations doesn't believe you. Most of the rest of the world looks at everything you just described and saying, you guys are liars. You're killing people, completely without hesitation. This human shield thing is a metaphor. It just means that there's civilians there, but they're not actually using human beings as shields. You're saying they are. How do you process that? How do you process the hatred? You lived it. You lived it. You tell the rest of the world, and the United Nations still condemns you. Doesn't condemn the people who started, even if they do condemn maybe moderately so Hamas for doing what they did on October 7th. They say that you guys are still doing more damage to the civilians who are not Hamas in Gaza because of things that they say you are doing, and they don't believe your stories. How do you process that?
It's hard to understand that people don't believe, but I think it's more than that. People don't want to believe. It's easier for people to, for some reason, to support terror because you don't need to be genius or even to participate that war in order to understand what's going on here. Hamas on October 7th uploads themselves and posted on Facebook Live, YouTube Live what they did. You don't need to be in Israel in order to understand that. They was proud about what they did. They're just brutally murdered babies and brutally murdered old people, young people, raped human, and this is what they did. There was bragging about that. They was proud about that, and they upload that. So if people just don't understand that, just please Google that. See what's going on. And I just don't understand what people think that we should do after such a horrible thing that happened to us. Those people support that. And now they're asking for peace treatment. How can I trust someone that repeatedly said that he want to wipe me out? He want to wipe out the state of Israel. He want to kill as many Israelis. And you know what? It's not just Israelis. It's the Western world in total. Because while they're shouting death to Israel, they're also shouting death to America. But more than that, I fought side by side with Muslims, Christian, and they didn't care. Just 3 weeks ago, the IDF were able to rescue Farhan. Farhan is a Bedouin Muslim guy. And when we rescue him after him being kidnapped on October 7th, entire state of Israel, everyone here was happy, and we were happy because this guy was rescued from Hamas, even though he was Muslim. They don't care about Muslims people, Christian people. They care to fight against the Western world, and they do everything in their power in order to wipe everything that stays on their way.
So, Kuno, can you go back a little bit to what you did when you got called up? You and your wife got that call that day. How long were you in active combat against these terrorists that you're talking about? I know you say you're in the reserves, but you obviously got called up, and so you were active. How long was that? And you mentioned the story about how you were trying to take out, on the roof of that school, the terrorist who was hiding behind the baby. Can you tell me any more? I mean, this is a little bit personal, but do you know how many people you killed actively in that early stage of the war against Hamas?
So I don't like to talk about numbers, but I can tell you that I was since October 7, I was 240 days in reserve duty. Some of the first 100 days I was in Gaza, then I had another several months at the Lebanon border and defense combat at the Lebanon border. And also I have different other responsibility during my reserve duty. We served a lot, me and my wife. Also, my wife also did something like 250 days of maybe even more of reserve duty through that time. But on October 7, I got
What,
called
what was
up.
what was her role, by the way? Was she just like you? I mean, armed and in combat situations, or was she in support
I
behind?
can, she, unfortunately, she's classified, so I can talk a little bit about her.
Okay,
But she did an important things. And
okay.
so me and her, we served just the last year over than 500 day in reserve together. And I called up on October 7. Then, after 3 weeks of preparation, we entered the Gaza Strip for the grounded maneuver. This is where I understood the amount of the houses that were full with explosions, rifles, hand grenade under baby beds. We can talk about that as well because it's insane. Even if, let's say that I'm with them, let's say that I think that their war is just, which I don't. Why the hell would you put a bombs under your baby beds, kids? Why? I just can't understand. People put terror tunnels in their baby rooms. You can enter one house, you see the baby sign, like a huge sign of a baby room, right in pink, something that you just think, oh my god, this is so nice. You open the door, you move the carpet, then you realize that there is terror tunnels under the carpet in the baby room. Just insane.
Well, but we know why for real, don't we? I mean, if I can't remember his name, but one of the planners of October 7th, safe from the retaliation in Qatar or Qatar, however you choose to pronounce it, but he said something to the effect of, um, we need more civilians to die. When civilians die, the anger of the rest of the world is raised against Israel. And so if they put bombs underneath their babies' cribs and so forth in baskets and tunnels underneath their rooms, and if they have their munitions stored in the basements of schools and everything else, and the more civilians die, the worse it looks for you, even if they're the ones responsible for killing them. So I mean, they literally feel as though these children and these women and these civilians are being martyred. They're going to heaven. They died in the course of serving Allah and serving the mission of wiping out the Israeli state. So isn't that kind of? I mean, I don't know how you win a war like that. I don't know how you win a war when the people that you're fighting are willing to kill themselves and their own families just to be able to advance a larger agenda against their enemy.
Yeah, it's. I don't think we can understand why they thinking that way, but this is how they thinking. That they don't care about life, unfortunately, and I just think that there is a sentence that Golda Meir, the old prime minister of Israel, once said: "When the Arab will care more about their children than the elimination of the state of Israel, will be peace."
Right.
Because
Um,
we choose life. This is what we are. We don't want this war. We want to have a safe life, to be able to celebrate with our family, and unfortunately, they educating for death.
One more question on the combat stuff for a moment, and then I want to talk about the politics of what Netanyahu should do, what the position of Israel should be about hostage release and so forth. But you mentioned that you were deployed to the northern region to fight, around Lebanon. Um, can you talk about the difference between the Hezbollah fighters that you have to face and the Hamas fighters that you face in the rest of the region of Gaza?
I don't think that there is such a huge difference between them. Just right now, they didn't cross the border. They did. They crossed the border on October 8th, and they killed several soldiers on the Lebanon border. And also, while we're talking, there is enormous number of people that are evacuated from their house for nearly a year, which is also insane. Because think about that, people cannot live at the north right now because Hezbollah shooting rockets everywhere. So if there is a different, I don't think so. The only different right now that there is more, the IDF more prepared to any invasion from the side of the Lebanon border. This is why they're not trying to breach. But yeah, they're using the UN as a shield. I saw with my own eyes Hezbollah trucks driving 1 meters away from a UN cars because they know that we won't shoot or we won't explode any UN cars. So they're using the UN. They're using the civilians over there, which is also insane. And I want the people to understand that it's for you just frustrated because you know when you fight as an IDF, as an army, you dressed with uniform. Everyone can understand that you are a soldier. And unfortunately, soldiers die during war, but you're not aiming towards civilians. While they don't dress as soldiers, they hiding among civilians. And basically what they're doing, they forcing you to suspect any civilians while we're trying to avoid any casualties. But sometimes they just forcing us to think because you can see 1 second someone with an AK-47, someone with a rocket, and then suddenly disappeared in the middle of a group of civilians. So they forcing us. And I want to share another experience. One of the time we saw a crippled guy that miraculously stood up and try to shoot out rockets against us. Actually, it wasn't a cripple, as you understand, but he using the image of human shield of being crippled because he know that we won't touch and we won't harm any civilians.
Um, so what I want to try to understand here too about all of this is, and I want to talk about your book a little bit more too, which is October 7th, the war against Hamas through the eyes of an Israeli commando officer, and that is you, Kona. So Kuno. So you tell the story in the book about a prisoner from Jabalia. Am I saying that correctly? Okay.
Yeah,
Who revealed to IDF soldiers, some of your colleagues, that he had millions of shekels hidden in his house. What was that about?
one of the time we found a group of terrorists side by side, also with civilians, and it was close to a place that we suspect that there is hostages in the area. So we were needed to take all of them to be interrogated. And then a few minutes before we took them, one of the civilians there approached to my friend and told him, "Can I tell you something?" And he said that in Hebrew. And the reason why he can speak Hebrew is because A lot of the people in Gaza used to work before October 7 in Israel, in Israel's factories, and they used that knowledge in order to fight and to breach our border. But I'm putting that aside. So he's coming and talk to my friend and says, "Can I tell you something?" And of course, my friend told me, "Yes, of course. What do you want?" And then he told him, "I have 2 million shekels in my house and 1,000, 100,000, 30,000 US dollar in my house." So my friend asked him, "Why you tell me that knowledge? Do you want to lead me into a booby trap? What is your goal behind that?" So he said, "No, to be honest, once you're going to take me away, 5 minutes later, the entire civilians that are living around my house will steal everything that I have. But I can trust you. I can trust the IDF." And a week after, he brought back, after the interrogation, to the Gaza Strip with all of his money, not a penny was missing. And this is just explain that even the citizen in Gaza, some of them understand that they can trust the IDF more than they can trust their own friend, or they can trust the Hamas.
That's a remarkable story, and the fact that I'm going to assume if any of his friends or anybody in Hamas found out about that, he's probably going to be targeted by them, right? I mean, he's risking his life even more so, telling you and then showing you everything that he said was true because they trusted you. Because they don't. I mean, again, these are people willing to kill their own family members in order to advance their cause. I would imagine that man was in grave jeopardy after that.
Yeah, I don't know that, but I'm assuming you're right.
Um, what was on some of the GoPro cameras too? You cover that in the book. You talked a little bit about what, some of the things that they sent, mom, I just killed 10 Israelis and so on and so forth. And I read about some of those things. I think those are probably some of the 47 minutes, the 47-minute video that a very select few people in the West have been able to see. I interviewed a couple of the people who were among them. Rabbi Barclay was one of them from California, and he saw it. And can you describe, even if you can't define exactly what was on some of those cameras, can you describe some of that for us so we get a real idea of what you saw?
Yeah, so on those GoPro, we found some of the video from October 7, but we also found videos of their terror tunnels that was just unbelievable huge. They have underground city under the Gaza Strip. We saw trucks driving inside those tunnels. People think that the tunnels it's something minority. Well, their tunnels is bigger than the New York Metro. It's insane. They have enormous number of tunnels. They have elevators. They have just people just can't understand what's going on. One of the time we were needed to bomb one of the entrances to the tunnels, and when we bombed that, a neighbor next to the tunnel entrance collapsed. The entire neighborhood, and the reason why it's because the tunnels going under entire neighborhoods. And the reason when we bombed that, the I don't know how to say it, but the explosion was
Yeah.
strong enough and went through the entire tunnels under that neighborhood. So when people thinking where are the tunnels, their tunnels are under mosques, hospitals, neighborhoods, kindergarten, schools. This is where their tunnels going through.
Well, sure, because then when you and the IDF forces come in and bomb them, like you said, it's going to lead to more death, destruction, and so forth, and they're going to again blame you for all of it. I can't believe they're as expansive as you're describing, because when we think of tunnels, we think narrow corridors underneath certain areas, and they're hiding people down there, but not as advanced as you're describing. Which kind of leads me to bringing this now to where we stand, and how you defeat this enemy. Um, Benjamin Netanyahu, your prime minister, says we will not stop until all of Hamas is wiped out. Because if we stop, um, they're going to rebuild and reconstitute themselves and come back at us and do it again and again and again, which is true because they have admitted as much, that there will be an October 8th, 9th, 10th, and so forth. They've said this. So But there are still a significant number of Israelis who say, stop, make the deal, let's have a ceasefire and get the hostages out. If they are as advanced as they are, with you're talking about their underground city, basically, and if they're willing to kill hostages who are found and are about to be rescued, like the six names you read to me just at the beginning of our conversation, how do you defeat an enemy that will kill every hostage before you can rescue them? And the only way to get them out is to actually cease fire and let Hamas become more dangerous.
So first of all, I think it's important to understand that we cannot trust people who slaughter babies. We can believe them. So when they say ceasefire, sorry, but it is a bullshit. This is what it is. On 2005, we gave them huge part of our land of the Gaza Strip, and we didn't request anything beside peace. Few months later, Hamas and other organizations were shot a missile towards us, towards Israel. So when they say ceasefire, sorry, but I can believe them because just few months ago or even a week ago, they just showed us their attention. Hamas tried to use these deals and these ceasefire as a something that shows that it's like they are willing to do ceasefire. But for real, they not try to do any ceasefire. I cannot trust them, but I also think that they don't want any ceasefire. But more than that, when people think that we need to do ceasefire, I can tell you that as long as they saying that they wishes to wipe out the state of Israel, we can settle with those people. They showing what they said, they saying out loud what they want to what they want to do, so we can trust them. And I totally understand those people. They are frustrated. They want our hostages here. I also want. I have look. I lost, as I told you before, too many friends in this war, and I want any hostages to be back into their families with their loved ones. But I can trust those people, and I understand that the only ability of us to win this war is to make sure that we're pushing Hamas out and not settle with them because they'll do everything. They kill their own people. They don't value his life. They only value death. And we just need to make sure that they have no gas, no electricity, no fuel until that they bring back our brother and sister. This is for me. This is the only way that I see.
Um, do you think it's realistic to hope that you will ever see those 101 people again alive? And I ask that because of what you just said. They're willing to kill their own families. They, of course, have no qualms whatsoever with killing the rest of those hostages. If you can't get them back by a ceasefire because you don't trust them, and I agree with you, you should not. I think the prime minister is right. He doesn't trust them either. But if you can't get them back with a ceasefire and a hostage negotiation because you cannot trust them, and you can't get them back by force because every time you get close and find them and go to rescue them, then they execute them, is there any realistic hope of getting them back alive?
Unfortunately, we understand that right now some of them are already being murdered. So I don't believe that everyone will be here alive. I hope that no, as many of them will be here alive, and I also hope that we will be able to find them because some of the people were just brutally murdered, burned till their ashes, and just they throw their bodies somewhere. So I don't believe that we will find everyone, but I can tell you that I believe that the state of Israel will try to do the best in our power to make sure that each one of them are brought back, and also to make sure that nothing like that will ever happen again. This is what I hope, and this is what I think that will happen. But it's important to understand that we're fighting a cruel enemy here, an enemy that's not stand by himself. You have huge amount of people, huge organization that support him, like Iran, Lebanon, Hezbollah, Yemen. So we see that it's bigger than just, people say the war against Hamas. Actually, it's not just against Hamas. It is against the entire enemies of the Western world, and we just need to make sure that they're not going to have any power to do that.
Um, that's obviously more difficult and I didn't mean to ask such a very difficult question, by the way. Are you ever going to get them back alive? It's a very hard thing, but war is, to borrow the phrase, war is hell. I can't process it myself, and so I just wanted to see how you felt about it. But when you talk about those hostages being released, many people are blaming the prime minister already for not having them released, saying that he should have not gone into Rafah. He should, and if he is there now, obviously they are and have made some great gains there. But give give Hamas what they want if they'll give those hostages back. Make the prisoner exchange. Empty the Israeli jails and prisons that are holding actual convicted criminals, not hostages, but convicted criminals who belong in Gaza. They're saying make the exchange. It's the only way we're going to get them back. Here in the United States, our own current president, who's on his way out, but was asked just a couple of days ago, is Benjamin Netanyahu doing enough to get the prisoners out, the hostages out? And he said, no, he's not. So there's a lot of pressure from here and from within Israel for the prime minister to not do what you just said and take them all the way out, but to go ahead and cave in and get those hostages free and let whatever happens next happen next. How do you feel about that?
First of all, if I could have trusted them to bring my brother and sisters, I would think that they will do everything that we can. But we can't trust the people that just brutally murdered us. And everyone who blame our government or blame anyone in Israel, the only blame is on Hamas. The only blame is on the people who did the crime. And it's just outrageous, the people pointing it towards us. Well, maybe, not maybe, that day we failed. That day, the IDF couldn't did what he was supposed to do, and the government didn't did what she was supposed to do. The government supposed to defend our citizen here in Israel. And on October 7th, it was a massacre, and the state of Israel should it's something that under the responsibility of the government. But the blame is on Hamas. The blame is on the people who did what they did on October 7th. And I do think I do understand why people are frustrated. I said that before. People want their brother and sisters here, and some of them are confused because they don't know what to do. Some of them are truly their only wish is just to have their brother and sisters back. So of course they protest, of course they try to do, but I think that sometimes they misunderstanding who are they protest against. And here I say that we should protest against Hamas. We should protest all over the world, and to help us to pressure Hamas and to make sure that Hamas don't get any supply or any help from outside the Gaza Strip, because they taking any aid, they taking any electricity, fuel that we're giving them in order to use for terror.
Yeah, they're taking it from you to use it to kill you, which is it's hard to comprehend. What can we do? We here in the United States, either as citizens, or what would you like our government to do?
First of all, to recognize that Hamas is the only issue here. He's the only issue. Israel do its best as we can in order to defend our country. So this is the first thing. Second of all, to spread that interviews, because I think people don't get the information what's actually going on in this war. We're trying to do as much as we can in order to avoid any casualties. But unfortunately, most of the media show just false accusation against Israel. So I want the people to understand what we're dealing with and what are we going through. And I also would like people to listen the funeral speech of Hersh Goldberg polling to understand which people were murdered that day. It's in English and it is everyone can understand, and you will understand that we're talking about innocent people, lovely people that they just did peace. They were just, they just want a peace and want to celebrate life, and they were brutally kidnapped and murdered by Hamas. So we are fighting a just war for our sake, for our hostages' sake, and also for the Palestinian sake who doesn't want this war from the first place.
Well, I certainly hope there are some things we can do, as you said, spreading the interviews and letting people know the reality of what is going on. And that is a great piece of advice, by the way, to listen to what was said at Hersh Goldberg Polling's funeral. It's a terrible, terrible situation, not because he was an American Jew, but because he was a human being, and all of the people who are human beings who are being held hostage and murdered and slaughtered at the hands of Hamas. It's hard to understand. We'll tell people again, your book is called October 7th, The War Against Hamas Through the Eyes of an Israeli Commando Officer. Elkana Cohen, I appreciate you coming on here and talking about this. I wish you didn't have to go through this. I wish you weren't about to have a baby in the chaos that is going on in Israel right now. But I wish you well. I wish you and your family health and safety as you navigate this. And just know that there are millions of American citizens who stand with you and stand with Israel. They might not all work for our government. In fact, some of our government might be working against your best interests, in my opinion, but just know that our prayers are with you, and we wish you the very, very best in this time.
Thank you very much, Bob, for having me. It's mean a lot. And I also want to say thank you for everyone who support us. It's mean a lot. We feel that. So thank you. Please keep doing that. It's amazing, and thank you for that. And I also want to say that if someone wants to ask me any question or anything, you can talk to me through my Instagram. My account it is Elkana ELKANA underscore Kuno KUNO. Again, ELKANA underscore KUNO. And hopefully I will be able to talk with you and to spread the truth. And that's it basically.
We will splash that Instagram address right on the screen here so that everybody can see it when this airs. We'll make sure. Oh, there it is right now already. Look at that. There's your Instagram page. So I would love for people to reach out to you and engage you in that conversation. Kuno, thank you again. God's blessings to you.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's going to do it for Strictly Speaking. Hey, two things. Number one, make sure you get his book. Make sure you read that if you really need to understand, and you do. October 7th, The War Against Hamas Through the Eyes of an Israeli Commando Officer. Visit his social media pages, just like he asked. And please also, if you found value in this conversation, give us a like and make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you can be there for the next episode of Strictly Speaking. Thanks, everyone. Be well. Bye-bye.